welcome back to Inside the Minds of Authors. I am thrilled you guys are joining me today. And then if you were here this morning, even better. So this is our second opportunity to be together. If you're new to the show, go ahead and subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. We're here sharing passionate authors who have incredible books with you guys. So I am excited you guys are here to join us. I have the honor and pleasure of having the amazing Mr. Michael. So I'm going to bring him on because you guys are here to see who is our guest. Hello, Mr. Michael. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the show. It is an honor to have you. And we're here discussing your new book. So for anybody in our audience, the book that we're going to be talking about for us is Live Like a Guide Dog. So I'm looking at the title. Tell us about it. What is the book about and what made you decide to write it?
Well, when the pandemic began, I realized that I had been talking and being a keynote public speaker for some 19 years at that point, almost ever since escaping from the World Trade Center on September 11th. But what I had not ever done was taught people some of the skills that I had used in order to be able to survive and escape. Specifically, talking about the fact that we can control fear. We don't need to allow fear to, as I would put it, blind us or overwhelm us and make it not possible for us to make decisions. Most people would think that's kind of crazy to say, but the reality is it's true. We can learn to control fear and use it to guide us rather than it coming along and overwhelming us. And so I decided that I would start to try to teach people that. And out of that came Live Like a Guide Dog, because one of the things that was suggested to me, and I adopted it when I and Carrie Wyatt Kent wrote the book, was that in reality, I learned, and I've said it many times before also, I've learned probably more about trust and teamwork and leadership from working with 8 guide dogs and my wife's, now my late wife's, service dog than I ever learned from all the management experts in the world. And so we wrote a book using the lessons that I learned from all of these dogs to help people understand that they have a lot more control over how they deal with situations than they think, and they don't need to allow fear to overwhelm them. And so that's what we wrote Live Like a Guide Dog about. And the title is really that. The fact is that if we learn to live a little bit more like dogs and less like what we're used to, we would all be better off.
With that in mind, I want to probe a little bit more into the book and kind of go into deep into these principles. What are some of the principles our viewers and readers can learn from this book that you're definitely saying this is something that they should take home? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. One, which is one of my favorite ones to talk about, is something that came out of what happened right after September 11th. I was speaking to the veterinarians at the guide dog school where I got Roselle, who was the dog who was with me in the World Trade Center. And I was talking with them the next day, asking them what the long-term ramifications would be concerning Roselle. And the head veterinarian said, well, did anything threaten her during the World Trade Center attacks? Did anything directly threaten her? And I said, no, nothing did. And they said, well, there's your answer. Dogs don't do what if. We what if everything to death. Dogs don't. They live in the moment. And something that I have said many times since September 11th, because I actually heard a voice in my head that told me this: don't worry about what you can't control. Focus on what you can and let the rest take care of itself. We what if everything. We worry about everything. And well over 90% of all the things we worry about, we have absolutely no influence over. But we still worry about them, and that drives us crazy. We need to step back and focus on the things over which we have some control. We need to focus on not what ifing everything to death, but rather dealing with the things that we can deal with and allowing the rest of things to happen. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be aware of those things, but worrying about them, taking them personally, doesn't help.
I heard a priest say once, what if is a distraction? So for you to bring it all together makes amazing sense because we put ourselves in these scenarios that have never happened and probably will never happen and just lose sight of everything. You mentioned fear. How does fear in working through our fears plays a role in your book?
Well, okay, so on September 11th, um, neither I nor anyone around me knew what happened as we were escaping. We figured out an airplane hit the building primarily because we began smelling burning jet fuel in the stairwell, but we didn't know any of the details. Nevertheless, a lot of people became or began becoming afraid. Um, Someone said to me, "We're going to die. We're not going to make it out of here," without any evidence to show that. And my response was, "Stop it. If Roselle and I can go down these stairs, so can you." The fact of the matter is, we worry about everything. We let everything make us afraid. And I'm not saying don't be afraid, but I'm saying you have control over how you deal with fear. On September 11th, we didn't have any control over the events happening, but what we absolutely have control over is how we deal with the events. And it was just as true as we were going down the stairs. We can learn to control our fears so that when something unusual or unexpected happens to us or something that may seem life threatening, and it might be, but still, we can learn to very quickly mentally step back and not let that just overwhelm us so we can't make decisions. And we can use our fears to help guide us and make more substantive, really powerful, relevant decisions that will probably do us a lot more good than harm.
So, Mr. Michael, you mentioned understanding, working through it. You were in the towers as the planes crashed. One of the things you have mentioned is you had your guide dog with you. How did you manage to stay focused through this process? Because you had people panicking. You said it yourself, and people going through it. It was just how did you get yourself out of that mindset of this something horrible can happen because you brought that up and just managed to get focused on that moment? What is your techniques for that?
One of the things that I had done when I first started working in the World Trade Center was taking a fair amount of time to walk around the complex and learn where things were. I talked to the Port Authority police, the security people, the fire department to learn all about the emergency evacuation procedures, excuse me, so that I knew everything that I could about the World Trade Center and especially what to do in the case of an emergency. I never thought we were going to have an emergency, but I still felt, as the leader of my office, I needed to know what to do and how to accomplish tasks because if something happened as the leader of the office, I needed to be the one to guide or help other people in dealing with issues. So on September 11th, because I had really learned all that I could about evacuating, where to go, what the procedures were, the mindset kicked in because I had really developed that mindset, although I didn't realize it at the time. But a mindset kicked in that says, you know what to do, use the knowledge you have to escape and to help others, and that's exactly what I did. And that's really part of it. Sighted people don't spend the time doing that. They figure, well, we can just read signs and it'll tell us what to do, but you don't have a lot of knowledge, and you may or may not be able to read the signs depending on whether there's a lot of smoke and other things around to prevent you from reading signs. In my case, I functioned based on absolute knowledge, and knowledge by any standard is a more certain way to be able to deal with whatever comes along. I knew what the various options were for escaping. I knew where I could go. I knew where all the emergency evacuation procedures could take me and what I needed to do. And so I just used all of that knowledge to be able to function and remain calm for that matter.
You were probably one of the best prepared persons to be in the World Trade Center at that time because you had not only done the research, but you practiced and you knew what to do and were able to give confidence to not just yourself, but the people there. So that's incredible. So when you decided to put this book together, because it's not your first book, what did you wanted to give people as a takeaway in terms of motivating them during these decisions? What were you thinking?
What I wanted people to do was to realize that I was showing them what I did. Thunderdog, the first book I wrote, as someone said, talked about what happened in the World Trade Center. Live Like a Guide Dog was more a book about why it happened for me the way it did. And that's absolutely correct. The bottom line is I knew what to do in an emergency. And what I wanted people and do want people to take away from Live Like a Guide Dog is that no matter what's going on in your life, you have a lot more control than you think you do. You may not have control over a specific thing that's occurring, but you have always control over how you deal with it and what your mindset is. And we need to train ourselves to have more focused mindsets and not worry about everything that comes along, but rather uh, learn how to be able to react during different circumstances in order to function and survive and stay alive. And that's what Live Like a Guide Dog is all about.
I love it. And that's such a powerful message to be able to survive and still stay focused to who you are. So that is powerful. Mr. Michael, switching gears as an author. This is something that you have been doing for a while. What is your process when you're going from an idea to manuscript? How do you do it? How do you put all these pieces together?
Um, well, one of the things that I believe, and when I talk about it in Live Like a Guide Dog, is that every evening before going to sleep or as I'm drifting off, I think about what happened during the day. What worked, what didn't work. I don't believe in failure. I do believe that things happen that we don't expect, and we shouldn't consider them failures, but rather learning opportunities. So those failures are really opportunities to learn and grow. Even the things that work well are things that give us the opportunity to, well, how can I make that even better? And so I think a lot about talks that I give. I think a lot about the lessons I learned in the World Trade Center and the lessons I've learned throughout my life that allow me to function and be able to do the things that I need to do in order to be able to survive and move forward. And I think about all that. And the next day, I work to try to put those into practice. And of course, if something happens that I don't expect, it may be good or it may not be good. But again, I consider everything learning experiences because I think we're always learning and we need to adopt an attitude that we're always learning. Anybody that just says, well, I know all there is to know, I don't, there's nothing else I can learn, um, that's the most dangerous attitude to have because there are always more things to learn.
Mr. Michael, what advice, since we're talking about learning and always getting prepared, what advice would you give an up and upcoming author who might be stuck and says, I can't do it? Because you've been writing for a while, you have overcome adversity, you have survived the World Trade Center, has been leading and teaching you or spoken around the world. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to keep trying. I would tell them to write down different ideas. Um, Now we also have something else that we can use as part of our efforts, which is the whole concept of artificial intelligence. I've written a number of articles and I've used Chat GPT to help. I don't let Chat GPT write the article. I will ask it to write the article and then I will take different aspects of it because oftentimes it comes up with ideas that I didn't think of. But the articles or the books have to be me and they have to be my words. So I will take any guidance that I can get. I believe writing in general can very likely be more successful if it's collaborative, or whether you collaborate with a computer or with another person. It doesn't hurt to bounce things off of other people or other technologies to help. So if you're stuck and you're just not going anywhere, then look for people you can talk with. Look for people you can go to and talk about where you're stuck. You'll get ideas, they'll help you. People in reality want us to be successful. And I think that's the most important thing that I can say. for any author. There's nothing wrong with collaborating. It's your work. You're doing it. If you're writing the book, that's great. But you always have friends. You always have connections. You have people that you can go to who may very well say something to you that will just get you started, even if it's in a different direction, but that will help you be more successful at your efforts.
That is such a good advice, and one that I actually have never heard. Most people think writing is such a lonely profession. So for you to say collaborate, get inspiration, talk to people is very powerful, because most authors are going, I have to do this by myself and nobody else can help me. So I love that. When you're
Yeah,
looking,
well, and
yes,
and I think people always can help. You may think that they can't, but you never know. It doesn't hurt to try.
I love it. What are you currently working on now? Are you working on your next book? What can we expect to be coming up next?
Right now, I'm not. We're working on a few things with Underdog, going toward it becoming a movie, and I'm also working to find more speaking engagements to travel and talk both about Live Like a Guide Dog and in the lessons from Thunderdog, trust in teamwork and leadership and so on. So right now I'm focused on excuse me, finding more speaking engagements. And if anybody needs a speaker, they're welcome to contact me at speaker@michaelhingson.com. Um, but we're working on that right now, and we'll see what happens with books down the line.
You mentioned your website and how people can get a hold of this. So this is a great opportunity to ask, where can our viewers and listeners get the book, where they can learn more about you? What is your website? Tell us.
The website is www.michaelhingson.com. That's www.michaelhingson.com. We're also highly visible on LinkedIn, and so people are welcome to connect. And we put out a lot of posts on LinkedIn, so there are things to learn there. Also, I do host a podcast called Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And the reason it's worded that way is that the typical DEI or diversity person never includes disabilities. So it doesn't get top billing. Inclusion does. You can't be inclusive unless you're also involving discussions about disabilities. And the fact of the matter is, there's no such thing as partially inclusive. You are or you're not. It's a quantum jump. You're inclusive or you're not. And you're not inclusive if you're not including all aspects and segments of society. The unexpected part of Unstoppable Mindset is everything that doesn't have anything to do with inclusion or diversity. So that's most things. So
Okay.
we have a lot of people who come on and talk about various things. And for the purposes of our podcast, we call that unexpected.
I like the unexpected part. Can we talk a
Yeah,
little
it's
bit more?
fun.
That's kind of, it is really fun. Can we talk about the disabilities? Because I think sometimes tend to put people and ourselves in boxes, and we think I can't do certain things because I have a disability, or I can't do this, or somebody with a disability. So as a part of the podcast, what are some of the things that our listeners who are enjoying podcasts will want to be able to learn more about it? Because this is
Well,
a
let,
topic
let's
that we don't cover.
let's talk about disabilities a minute.
Yes.
Disability does not mean a lack of ability, although most people think that it does. And the thing that most people don't accept, I'm not saying it's out of arrogance, it's more out of a lack of education than anything else. But the thing that most people don't expect or understand is that every person on the planet has a disability. For most people, it's light dependence. You don't do well if suddenly the power goes out unless you can find a smartphone or a flashlight or something to turn on and have more light available to you when the power goes out. The reality is, however, that that is just as much a disability as for those of us who are light independent, who don't care whether the lights are on or not. And so one of the things that I point out to people is Thomas Edison invented the electric light bulb back in 1878. And he did that so that people who were light dependent would have a light source, especially in the dark and so on. But the reality is that there's still just as much a person with a disability as anyone else. And we need to understand that all that Thomas Edison's light bulbs and all the light on demand that we have in the world, the only thing that does is cover up your disability. It doesn't change the fact that it's still there and happens from time to time. Also, um, another thing that people say to me when I say disability doesn't mean a lack of ability is, well, sure, it means a lack of ability. Disability starts with dis. So of course it means a lack of ability. Well, discrete starts with dis. Disciple starts with dis. And the reality is, I never heard discrete means a lack of crete or disciple is a lack of eiffel. The reality is that dis is not the issue. It's people's perceptions. And the fact of the matter is, everyone has a disability, everyone has gifts. We need to accept the fact that everyone has gifts and honor people for the gifts that they have, whoever they are. My gifts aren't necessarily the same as yours, but that doesn't change the fact that I have gifts anyway.
That is such a huge point that I think sometimes we take for granted. I love the fact that you talked about people having a disability to light. As a person who was born in the Dominican Republic, I really was terrified every time the power went out, and it happened more often than I cared to. And how dependent we are to light and how dependent we are to see. And so that is such a huge point that we take for granted. So, as a
Mm-hmm.
person who is promoting this information, how do you get people to understand the importance to be much more inclusive? Not just because it was the word that we've been throwing around, but how do you explain that to them to make everybody feel part of these conversations?
Well, I talk about it like we're doing here. The thing is that one conversation is most likely not going to get people to emotionally and intellectually accept the concept. But if I can get people to start to think a little bit more about it, then I think I've made all the effort that I can and I've accomplished something if we can get people to think about it. But the problem is that it is so ingrained in our society that if you're blind, you can't be as good as everyone else. That's one of the things that professionals in the field of work for the blind for years talked about, the fact that we're visually impaired, which is the most disgusting, gross thing that you can say. Why? Because visually I'm not different simply because I'm blind. And if somebody loses their eyesight today, that doesn't mean that they're visually different. And impaired, I am not. Blind and low vision is a much more accurate term. I shouldn't be equated to everyone else just based on how much eyesight I do or don't have, unless you're also willing to say that you're blind impaired, which means you're a whole lot worse off than I am, if we go by that definition. The reality is that people need to understand that everyone on the planet has gifts, and we shouldn't in any way demean anyone just because their gifts are different than ours and they do things differently than we do them.
I absolutely agree. And I love the way you put it. We all have gifts and we all have something to bring to the conversations, and we all need to be taken seriously at the table. So I
Hmm.
absolutely love it. Mr. Michael, it has been truly a pleasure having you on the show. But before you go, are you ready for the lightning round? Super easy. Don't think too hard on these questions. Let's see how you do. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Me too. Thank you.
PG
City.
Tips is my favorite tea. It's a British tea, and I drink it every day.
Okay. I think I might have to try that one. City or country?
Um, that's harder. I like both. I think for me, there's value in being at least in a fairly small city as opposed to way out in the country because I have better access to resources. But I like both. I grew
Oh,
up in a very rural area in California, um, and now I'm in an area fairly close to where I grew up. There are 120,000 people around me, but there are a lot of resources that I wouldn't have if it were more rural. So I've got to say that I'm really pretty flexible as long as I have access to resources.
okay. Mystery or fiction?
Um, I love mysteries and science fiction.
Okay. We'll give you both. Here's a little different. Let's see how you do with this one. If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
I'm sorry, if my life what?
If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
Um, but I have this dance for the rest of my life. Anne Murray.
Love it. Perfect. Mr. Michael, it's been a pleasure having you. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
No, just that I encourage everyone to recognize that we all live on the same planet. We all have gifts. Don't ever demean someone. Don't ever assume that you know more than others do. And as a result, you don't take them into account in looking when they're looking for jobs and so on. The unemployment rate among employable blind people is 70%. It's not that blind people can't work, it's that sighted people think blind people can't work. We really need to deal with that and recognize that we all can do the job. I just read on Facebook on Thursday about a woman who gave birth to a child, and the child was taken away by the court, saying a blind woman couldn't possibly be the mother of a child and wouldn't be able to raise a child. That's happened many times before, and typically, once it goes through enough of a battle, the parent gets the child back. We'll see what happens with this particular case in Illinois. But the reality is, blindness isn't the problem. It's society's attitudes and lack of knowledge about blindness that's the real problem. And the same thing in the World Trade Center. People say to me all the time, well, you got out because your guide dog led you out. Guide dogs don't lead, they guide. The job of the dog is to make sure that I walk safely. It's my job to know where to go and how to get there. And I have to give commands to the dog to do that. So it's a team. And that's what teamwork is all about.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. That is such a powerful message that our listeners as well as our viewers can definitely take home with them today. So thank you so much. A truly a pleasure having you, and we truly appreciate you sharing your message as well as these books with us. So thank you to our viewers. Please make sure to check out Mr. Michael's website. Make sure you take a look, sign up for his message, follow him and link him. You truly are going to be moved by his message. We have one more interview coming up today, so it will be at the top of the hour, so 2 o'clock Central Time if you're joining us. So go ahead. If you're watching us, the recording, make sure to leave some comments. We truly enjoy. Make sure to subscribe. We are here sharing amazing authors all the time who have incredible books. So we're glad you guys are joining us, and I will see you guys shortly. Bye, everyone.